Taking a live look over the Israel-Lebanon border as we continue to cover the latest here out of the Middle East. Now, I do want to take a look at some of this video coming in from yesterday. We showed this to you as breaking news as it was coming in. Israeli soccer fans brutally attacked after a match in Amsterdam by hordes of people who were apparently riled up by calls on social media to target Jewish people. Dutch law enforcement providing that update a day after the ambush attacks that were deemed anti-Semitic and targeted. This was some of the video from Thursday night showing the chaos after that soccer match between Ajax and Maccabi Tel Aviv. Police say young people on scooters and on foot were traveling all over the city seeking out Jewish people, then punching and kicking them and taking off. At least 5 people were hospitalized and more than 60 others were arrested. We're told that 4 of those arrested do remain in custody this morning. At one point, 10 Israelis were considered missing. No question, there is a lot to discuss, so I do want to bring in Mark Chandler, Director of Government Relations and Professor of Practice at Coastal Carolina University, also a former senior defense intelligence official. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us as always.
You're welcome, Josh, and good morning to you.
Good morning. So at this point, this does appear to be a targeted anti-Semitic series of attacks, right?
Yes, it absolutely was. Very systematic, a focused attack with the objective of going after the Israelis who were traveling to that soccer match. As a matter of fact, and you talked about social media, this thing seems to have been organized and coordinated through Telegram, a popular social media app more commonly used in the Middle East and in Europe. And matter of fact, a little disturbing is some of those in coordinating this attack called it and I'll excuse the pronunciation, the Pogrom, which has its genesis in late 19th, early 20th century attacks on Jews, organized mob violence or massacre of Jewish people. And so I think that when you look at the context, you start to see a little bit more of the organization of this attack. It looked random. It looked like just standard mob violence got out of control, but really this was pre-coordinated using that app and actually going after, because they knew the Israelis would be in town for the soccer match. And even Mossad had some indications of some type of attack, and they warned the Netherlands of this attack preceding it.
So we know that 63 people were arrested at least, but odds are that more people were probably involved in this, especially when you do think about everything that happened on social media, all of that information that was circulated on Telegram. I mean, I'm on Telegram and I can see a lot of those messages that come in pretty rapidly.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you look at the number of that, you know, the Dutch were a little slow to respond right away, but then they got their feet under them, if you will, and they began going after and arresting. So you see a group arrested first, and he looks like a little core group localized there that they're detaining for further questioning and investigation. However, I think when you look at the fact of the use of Telegram, how widespread it is, that it's likely the planners, the ones who originated the plan and tried to encourage it, may not even have been in the Netherlands. You know, so finding them may be a difficult task, and the Dutch may not be able to do that. As you know, as I said, they could be anywhere in Europe or elsewhere, kind of organizing this kind of violence.
We've actually seen over the past, I would say, more than a year since the October 7th attacks, kind of an uptick in those anti-Semitic crimes, not just talking about Amsterdam, but Europe as a whole.
Yeah, we have, Josh. And, you know, as a non-Jew myself, I started to look at this, and you go back over time. We've talked about it throughout the protests in the United States. But I am very alarmed at the scope and the breadth of these anti-Semitic activities around the world. And when you look at this, they're kind of categorized into kind of a global anti-Semitism movement. You know, specific hate speech that we started to see, trying to demonize Israel itself for defending itself against Hamas and Hezbollah, you know, and then focusing on demonizing the Jews as a culture and as a religion. So you look at that and you go against individuals. This attack that we're talking about from Thursday night, you can consider that kind of a combination of organized violence, but also attacks on individuals. They knew 2,000 plus Israeli citizens were going to be in Amsterdam for this. So they focused on that. And then you can kind of see, if you will, where governments have or have not spoken out against anti-Semitism. You know, we in the United States even have started to say, you know, didn't really embrace the speaking out against the protests that we had in our country. So that kind of gives a tacit approval, if you will, by some of these governments, more out of fear of what the protesters might do than standing up with some moral courage, if you will, if I look at that. Now, the preponderance of these incidents and this growing specter of anti-Semitism has occurred in Europe, primarily Britain, France, and Germany. They have a large Middle East and Muslim immigrant situation that's taken place there. But it's not exclusive to that. We've seen anti-Semitism take place in Australia, parts of Asia, Northern Africa. So it's spread around. And when I look at the incidence increase, I kind of compared the year before October 7th to this past year. And in each country alone that I've talked about, you're seeing an increase into the hundreds of incidents. And so one final thought about this is I don't want to leave the United States out. So I looked at the time frame of the past year after October 7th in the United States alone. You know, we've seen over 10,000 incidents, anti-Semitic incidents in the United States alone. That's an increase of over 7,000 in just 1 year alone. So you're looking at this growing problem, growing anti-Semitism that just seems to have a hold right now and is not slowing down.
What does the situation itself kind of say about the Jewish population, the thoughts globally, and maybe some of the dangers that Jewish people face across the world?
Well, one, you know, in Israel itself, they're facing an existential threat. You've got Arab states, you've got terrorist Hezbollah, terrorist Hamas, and you've got nation state of Iran, all wanting to eliminate Israel from the face of the earth. So you're faced under that pressure as an Israeli citizen, you know, living there, that these people want to eliminate you, both as a nation and as a race. So you have to look at that threat. But when you spread this out, I think that as a Jew, you have to be specifically on guard for what you're facing around the world on a daily basis, whether it's in the United States, Britain, France, wherever you may travel. Unfortunately, you're going to be facing this. And I think there was a quote from FBI Director Wray, and I'm going to not get it exactly, but he talked about how the Jewish community is unique because they are targeted by pretty much every terrorist organization around the world. And I'm going to throw in, let's add on, you know, a nation state such as Iran, trying to eliminate them. So I think, you know, for Jews to stand up and be aware of really what they faced and the honest understanding of that. And I speak of this, Josh, you know, hopefully with some understanding as a non-Jew myself of the dangers that the Jewish people face.
You kind of mentioned Iran there, so I do want to piggyback off of that and talk briefly about a situation we learned about, I would say 24 hours ago, where a person is essentially charged and wanted by authorities in the U.S. for attempting to kind of plan the assassination of former President Trump, now President-elect Trump. Is it even possible for authorities here in the U.S. to track this guy down? Because we're told that he is somewhere in Iran, but how do you kind of, I guess, locate him there?
Well, I think first off, you know, the three people charged with that, two are in New York, and that's easy to apprehend those. But Shikari is the guy you're speaking about, and he is in Iran. I think what the Justice Department's doing, what the FBI is trying to do is you can issue an arrest warrant, you can indict him, but short of an operation, what we would call a snatch operation, a special operations forces to go inside Iran and try to capture this guy, there's pretty much nothing that we can do to get him back. I highly doubt that Iran is going to voluntarily turn this guy over, since Iran is behind the plot. And so we have to kind of look at the reality of the situation, capture who we can inside the United States who are part of these plots. And these plots are continuing, but realize we're not going to be able to get perhaps the main culprit behind it or the main coordinator behind it, such as Shikari, who is in Iran. And again, I want to just say this was yesterday released, but we had incidents in September, incidents in October, and we go back to July where the U.S. national intelligence community has talked about assassination threats to President Trump and some former leadership, and also the hacking on his campaign, going in there, taking his emails. This all stems back from Iran's fear of Trump taking office, but also the fact that in 2020, we killed Qasem Soleimani. Iran has promised that they will attack and try to kill Trump and some of those senior leaders involved in that. And they're going to stick to their promise.
As you mentioned, two of the suspects there in New York. You can see that live look of the skyline off to the left-hand side of your screen. My final question for you here, and you did touch on this, do we expect that Iran is actually going to stop targeting President-elect Trump now that he is back in office, or does that just make them try even harder?
I think it's going to make them try even harder, Josh. Unfortunately, you look at how Iran they try to fulfill their promises of retribution and retaliation. So this is kind of an eye for an eye thing, and they're going to go after President-elect and then President Trump through there. I think within the confines of the United States, he's going to be relatively secure. Nothing's 100%, but I think we can control the dynamics and the situation within the United States. But as you know, the job of the president is to travel and meet with international leaders. And that's where I believe Iran could try to find gaps and weaknesses in the security services overseas. Because what we have to then get into is not just U.S. intelligence gathering information, but trying to share that with what we call the host nation country. And then you have to tie in the host nation security. I think that's a weak link. I think it's going to be a significant challenge for the Secret Service and our intelligence community to track these threats that Iran is going to continue to perpetrate throughout his entire administration.
All right. Mark Chandler, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to join us and helping to break down a variety of topics there. Anything else you want to add about any of this, any of the going-ons there over in the Middle East before I let you go?
Well, Josh, we could probably spend all day talking about this, and it's a very complex and highly integrated threat that we're facing over there. So it's just something we do. And one thing I would just like to say that's perhaps not about the threat, but two things where we put our forces and our people in harm's way all the time to protect our national interests. Monday is Veterans Day. So a shout out to all our veterans. And tomorrow, if I may, just, as a former Marine myself, I just want it. That's our 249th Marine Corps birthday tomorrow that we celebrate. So I want to give a shout out and a happy birthday to all our fellow Marines out there across this nation serving us today against all these threats that we're facing.
All right. Mark Chandler, thank you so much for taking the time, as always, to spend part of your morning with us and break down all the different topics. We appreciate it.
Josh, thank you very much, and good luck covering all of this today.
Thank you.